Hi, welcome to the last section of George Orwell's 1984 book discussion with Emily K, Emily F, and Maddie. So,
That was perfect. Keep it in.
alright, go for it, Emily F.
So first we're gonna talk about our overall impression of the book and why we thought that way. So I liked it. It was very dense, but I feel like it talked about a lot of really kind of deep themes, and the theme of power and like how different nations try to take power in different ways and the reasons for that. Like they said that they were just doing it for the sake of power rather than for the sake of anyone else. I liked it.
It like made me angry because like the Brotherhood like didn't. Well, he didn't really say if it exists or not, but just like made me really angry that these people were like in power and they were really awful and they could like torture people and like nobody was gonna stop them, and like O'Brien seemed so certain that like nobody was gonna like take Big Brother down and like the inner party, outer party. It just made me so angry. And then like you have Winston and he like I really liked it, but it also like made me so angry. But I think it was good because like it made me like actually think about things, and like I couldn't just like read it. Like it like made me have like very strong feelings.
Yeah, I definitely, like, out of all the, like, endings I could have thought of, that was not what I was expecting. I was definitely expecting, like, a lot more, and, like, a lot more successfully, like, rebellion, and, like, the fact that, like, everything just kind of, like, was just defeated, and it was really sad and depressing at the end, was, like, not what I was expecting, and also, like, again, all the themes and everything, like, really made you think, and, like, I think it was a really nice piece of writing altogether.
Yeah, like the ending was really unexpected, but also I feel like I should have expected it, because reading the whole thing, you hear about how they're always in power, and like even O'Brien, like when they first met, was like, we don't know when the party will be overthrown, probably won't even be in our lifetime. So they were like, oh, it's probably not gonna happen, and Winston was just like, oh, I'm gonna die, definitely. But I still didn't expect that to happen.
Yeah.
And also I really liked the part with Goldstein's book. I thought that that really cleared things up with how this all happened and how it could realistically happen, I guess. Just the fact that they put that, like, Orwell put that in there to explain his whole view.
So going back to the ending, like super fast, I think like a lot of like really good like books that have like lasted for a while, like they don't have like happy endings. Like this ending, like, because people have like very strong reactions to it, because they're like, oh no, like the Brotherhood, they're gonna like take down the party, blah blah blah, or like, because I was like, oh, either like the Brotherhood's gonna go down or like Winston's gonna like die, and like he didn't. Like he was kind of like fine after all the torture. And I think like really good books are, I think like, didn't Mr. Bowman talk about this last year, where he's like, good books, they have to like be an ending that you wouldn't expect, but it can't be like too far out there, because then the readers like
this
won't
was
follow
realistic.
you. Yeah. So because like I wasn't really expecting it, even though like I probably should have, but I think I was like too optimistic about it. But anyway, back to like the book that like Winston read, like that O'Brien gave him. I thought it was so interesting, and I thought it was even more interesting like O'Brien like helped write it.
Yeah, that was interesting. Like I didn't expect that.
Like he just like straight up acknowledges that like they just like want power, and they like modeled it like after like the Nazis and like other like horrible people.
Yeah, but they did it successfully for a long
I thought
time.
okay, like I have to give them credit, like they did
That
a
is
really
really
good job.
That is really smart.
It's really smart.
It's really smart, and you like it, like since he partly wrote the book, and I guess other party members did as well. Like they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like even when Winston was trying to be like, oh, you're doing it, like you're gonna say you're doing it for the greater good, like for the good of the people, the good of the masses.
Like,
he was like, no,
no.
we're doing it for the power. We're doing it for ourselves. We know exactly what we're about.
Yeah, because like other like countries, like I mean the U.S., like we could change our like democracy if we wanted to, and like the people in power like don't stay in power, like we can like influence that. But like here, like you can't. Like the people who are in the inner party like stay the inner party, and like people replace them, but they're kind of like the same type of people. So like nothing changes, and they have power, and it's really interesting.
Also, like, I just, like, even thinking about this, like, now and compared to today's society, like, when you read dystopian, like, novels, it always, like, it does end kind of sad, but there's always, like, that happy ending, and, like, they overthrow this government or whatever powers,
Like the Hunger Games.
the Hunger Games, or, like, the Divergent series, or, like, I don't know if you've read The Uglies or like
Mhm.
basically anything that you think of. Basically, there's some type of happy ending with a bunch of deaths.
One thing is that like they are more recent dystopian novels, and they are
Yeah.
geared more towards teens, so maybe that's why they're more like
Yeah.
happy.
But yeah, so I just thought it was a very like good comparison to just read something different, because you almost like reading those type of novels like today, like the modern ones, like you almost get tired of reading them because they all have the same ending, and this was like very refreshing
Mhm.
because like I did not expect that ending. I wasn't expecting, especially just from reading all of those, like the fact that like nothing that you expected is how like it ended. Usually you kind of like put the main character in like a little box and they're a little hero and like they're gonna
Mhm.
save the day despite their faults, and versus like Winston definitely did not
did
do
not.
that.
I mean, I can definitely see why why he eventually like loved a big brother and like he betrayed everything, because he went through so much torture, and like they had done this before. The party knew what they were doing. Like
Yeah,
it's
but,
how
like,
they survived.
In the room like 301, I believe.
101.
101. So like
Oh
it
yeah,
was,
I was really surprised.
It increased
that he
his
betrayed
fear
Joel.
yeah.
Yeah.
about the room. I mean, I can see why that like that
You
was
had
his
some-
worst
Yeah,
fear.
yeah.
You had some like small hope though that he kind of like regained it back a little bit, but then it was all
Mhm.
shattered with the
Yeah.
with the rats.
But even though he did end up loving Big Brother, do you think he still hates him? Because he said that at that one point, but I think this was before Room 101, but he said that the only redeeming thing
Yeah.
about all of this was when they shot him right before then, he would hate them. And that's what
Yeah.
what they didn't want, and it would be
Yeah.
he would die too quickly to start loving him again.
that was
yeah,
like,
before
I-
the Julia thing.
It was before.
Do you
but,
think
like,
it's still true though? I think it still is.
I mean, the thing is, I think he's like so far deep. It's kind of like when you're playing the part, but then you play like so much like to become it.
Yeah. So I don't. But then like he
I
said
think
that
that
he
the
still has
betraying
those
Julia
memories.
though,
He still has
That
those
really
memories.
changed something.
Yeah.
especially because I feel like that was his like last like resorting effort,
Yeah.
and that was like his last thing that he was holding out for,
Yeah,
and
because
like
do you remember like O'Brien? He's like, oh, he betrayed people, and he's like, I didn't betray Julia, and he's like, oh, true, and then Remote 101 happened.
Yeah. But like
So I
I
think
feel
that
like
broke in.
yeah, I feel like there's still a possibility because he still has those memories. It just kind of depends. Because there was that whole thing at the end
yeah.
with like the war that they could have lost, but it was like
Yeah.
victory.
But it was victory,
Honestly.
and because he like
I
thought
couldn't
about
tell.
like, oh, like maybe like Oceana will like go away.
Yeah, because he seemed pretty happy about the thought that Oceania
Mhm.
could possibly like lose the war. So
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a good book. We will first do a rhetorical analysis of a character speech by O'Brien. No, explained O'Brien. His voice had changed extraordinarily, and his face had suddenly become both stern and animated. No, not merely to extract your confession, nor to punish you. Shall I tell you why we have brought you here? To cure you, to make you sane. Will you understand, Winston, that no one whom we bring to this place ever leaves our hands uncured? We are not interested in those stupid crimes that you have committed. The party is not interested in the overt act. The thought is all we care about. We do not merely destroy our enemies, we change them. Do you understand what I mean by that? So, I feel like this kind of plays on pathos a little bit, because he's asserting to Winston that he wants to help him. That he doesn't care that he committed crime, but he just wants to make him sane and trying to help him. He tries to like make Winston think that he's the good guy here.
I think it's also a lot of logos, because especially while playing on the pathos, by doing that, he's also making it very logical, and like it makes Winston go, oh yeah, like cool, like, and not like it takes a while for him to get there, but eventually like it works and it gets Winston on their side, and like by having such logical like reasoning and thinking, it allows Winston to get to that place at the end of the book.
It also has like he also has ethos, because he's part of the inner party, and he's like done this many times before, so he knows what he's doing, and then he like mentions the party to like enforce his ethos.
Yeah, and Winston has always seen O'Brien as someone he can talk to.
Yeah.
Someone who's an equal. So, like, O'Brien pulls on that to say, you can trust me. You trusted me before. Why not now?
Yeah.
So for the style, it's a very direct address. He is directly talking to Winston. And there are a lot of rhetorical questions in there that he uses to make his point. For example, shall I tell you why we brought you here is a question. And he answers to cure you, obviously. That's what he wants Winston to think, and he reinforces that by asking questions Winston should already know. He thinks Winston should already know the answer to, and by making the answer seem really obvious.
They're also using like invention and arrangement. He also uses the arrangement to make a persuasion. So the way he arranges it is he goes through it logically and like almost a stream of consciousness is where he keeps going through the argument and like keeps pointing out all these things to Winston, and by doing that he's also persuading the reader and Winston.
So for delivery, O'Brien, it says that he exclaimed and then like his voice changed extraordinarily and his face has suddenly become both stern and animated. So he's very passionate about what he's talking about. It's also oral to Winston. So he's like very passionate about what he's saying. And then memory, so he makes references to like the party which Winston knows about, and what he's saying is like very memorable because it's about how they're kind of like gonna like torture Winston and like make him cured, and so Winston's in a lot of pain, so he's like thinking about it.
Now we're gonna move on to the rhetorically analyzed a setting. Take it away, Emily K.
There was a constant come and go of prisoners of every description. Drug peddlers, thieves, bandits, black marketers, drunks, prostitutes. Some of the drunks were so violent that the other prisoners had to combine to suppress them. An enormous wreck of a woman, aged about 60, with great tumbling breasts and thick coils of white hair which had come down in their struggles, was carried in, kicking and shouting by 4 guards who had hold of her, one at each corner. They wrenched off the boots with which she had been trying to kick them and dumped her down across Winston's lap, almost breaking his thigh bones. The woman hoisted herself upright and followed them out with a yell of F bastards. Then, noticing that she was sitting on something uneven, she slid Winston's knee onto the bench.
So for ethos, the ethos for Winston comes from him directly experiencing this. He's been in this prison for a while, and there was a constant come and go of prisoners of every description, he says, and then he just says what he sees, and so he's directly experiencing it. He can see it with his own eyes, so he knows that there are people, what's going on in the prison, more or less.
So logos. It's just like the way that the paragraph is set out, it's very logical. It's just like describing people very descriptively. Yeah.
You can really see like the pathos also in this too. You can see how like the reader could connect to this. Like this is kind of similar to what you would think of as like a jail cell. Like normally like you see all the different types of people. There's like every different crime. There's like something familiar also within this, like something that like most readers are not very familiar with at all, hopefully. So yeah, there's your pathos.
The style. It's just a paragraph that's very descriptive. It starts off very broad, talking about the different types of prisoners, and then specifically one woman who comes in kicking and shouting, and she's just thrown in, and you can kind of see that obviously no one wants to be there, and the party is very cruel to the prisoners, just throwing them in, not really caring about taking care of them and stuff, and she's very angry about that.
Yeah, you can see how the arrangement starts off, like you said, very broad and narrows it down. You can also see like the intention, or not the intention, the invention to like finding out persuasion is kind of to like persuade the reader to like basically just kind of understand what Winston is going through and how he's dealing with this process, and like just like how the overall setting is affecting his experience in this.
Okay, so delivery. This is just written down on the page for the reader to consume. The only piece of dialogue is 2 words, so there's that. So memory. This piece is very descriptive, and a lot of things are like very memorable, like the drunks being very violent, describing the woman, which was very interesting.
Now we're going to move on to our rhetorical analysis of a dialogue of a conflict. Do you remember, he went on, writing in your diary, freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 makes 4. Yes, said Winston. O'Brien held up his left hand, it back toward Winston with the thumb hidden in the 4 fingers extended. How many fingers am I holding up, Winston? 4. And if the party says that it is 4 but 5, then how many? 4. The word ended in a gasp of pain. The needle of the dial was shot up to 55. the sweat had sprung out all